an honor to speak on Yom Yerushalayim. I can vividly remember as a very young child the worry and then my parents' excitement during the 6-Day War when the Kotel was captured. Yerushalayim biyadenu, Ir ha'atika biyadenu, HaKotel biyadenu, Harabayit biyadenu. Every time I go to Israel, every time I read the words of the momentous events or hear the tapes of the battle or the songs or see the pictures of Rav Goren blowing the shofar at the Kotel, surrounded by the soldiers, I appreciate anew the miracle that Yerushalayim is in our hands. Yerushalayim biyadenu. Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. My parents flew to Israel as soon as they could after the war. And next year took my brother Yochav and I to Israel to visit family and all the newly captured places, especially the Kotel and Ir HaAtikah, where my father told us stories from his childhood. Today is 50 years since Yerushalayim was reunited. My father was born in 1922 in Ir HaAtikah, the old city. His Karliner Hasidic ancestors, Reb Aaron Mikarlin and his Hasidim, made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael from Karlin Stol in Lithuania in the early 1800s. My father vividly remembers the interesting personalities, the nigunim, the minhagim, the shtiblach, the tfilot, the hardships, going to cheder, davening in the churba shul. He recounts lovingly the special occasions during which he went with his grandfather to the small strip of the Kotel when the Jews were given permission by the Grand Mufti of Yerushalayim and the British. He remembers going to learn from Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook and from Rav Herzog, and the harsh criticisms of Rav Amram Bloy, head of Neturei Karta. Subsequently, he lived in Geula and Kiryat Moshe. He went to Seminar Limorim and to Yeshivat Hebron. He was a Madrich in Bnei Akiva and one of the founders of the first Bnei Akiva Yeshivat Tichonit in Kvar HaRoeh. He is an embodiment of the transformations that were taking place in Israel, a child of Hasidic Cheder to Mizrahi Bnei Akiva leader and educator. He was very influenced by Rav Kook's ideology, Am Yisrael be'Eretz Yisrael, al pi Torat Yisrael. When I travel to Israel, I always feel these strong Yerushalmi roots that date back 6 generations. I feel an extra kinship with the Kotel, Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael. And 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to start a new link in the chain. On Chet Iyar, the 8th of Iyar, May 3rd, my son Avigdor, who made Aliyah, served in Tzahal in the Golani Brigade, and is now learning in the Kolel Gavoa in Yeshivat Har Etzion, and his wife Devora, Ney Schreiber, had a baby boy. He is the first Sabra of my grandchildren born in Yerushalayim. 2 weeks ago, Tetvav Iyar, Tetvav, right? May 11th was his brit. We flew in to celebrate. It was a very moving moment for me. Nachshon Yekutiel is regenerating my family's heritage. The Pidyon HaBen will be in Yirtzeh Hashem in Tet Sivan, June 3rd. You are probably wondering what my mother, Professor Yaffa Elliach, Alea Shalom, who passed away this past Chet Cheshvan, Holocaust historian, has to do with Yerushalayim. My mother's birthday is the 31st of May, 1935, which is the 28th of Iyar, and that became Yom Yerushalayim. She would have been 82 tonight. She married a 6th-generation Yerushalmi, my father, Rabbi David Elliach. May he live a long and good and healthy life. My mother was born in a shtetl called Eshishok, that is on the outskirts of Vilna, the Yerushalayim Delita, in a very Lithuanian shtetl. They had their own successful yeshiva called Yeshivat HaPrushim, or Kibbutz HaPrushim. Eshishok also had many Gemilut Chesed ideological and educational societies. Her mother, my grandmother, Tzipora, after whom I'm named, Smadar Tzipora, headed the Dovrei Ivrit Club and was the head librarian of the Hebrew Lending Library. My grandmother Tzipora spoke Hebrew to my mother Yaffa as a child. So even though everyone called my mother Sheinale, which is the Yiddish translation, right, of her given name, Yaffa, my grandmother Tzipora always insisted on calling her Yaffa in Hebrew and speaking to her in Hebrew. By the way, my daughter Ayala and her husband Hanan Freilich had a beautiful baby girl 2.5 months ago, whom they named Yaffa, after my mother. It is a real nechama and nachat to see such continuity. This is Queens. We're all mishpacha. So I can be out of my usual speaker character and share a little nachas with you. And we've been together for so many years, so right, we could share some of that. My mother Yaffa Sonnenson, an 11-year-old girl, wound her way through post-war World War II Europe with her uncle Sholem and his expectant second wife Merale. Yaffa had to leave her hometown because her mother and baby brother were murdered in a pogrom after they survived the entire official Holocaust as an almost intact family, through 3 years of hiding during the war. Her father was then arrested and taken to a Siberian gulag prison, and her teenage brother joined the partisans. She was left all alone. Her uncle Sholem promised her father, Moshe, that he would take her to Eretz Yisrael. Yaffa was a spunky handful and got into a lot of mischief in the DP camps, breaking rules and accidentally revealing her true identity. Throughout their travels in Soviet territory, they had to be very cautious because Yaffa's father, my grandfather Moshe, was considered a criminal and was in the Siberian gulag, and Yaffa was traveling as Sholem and Merale's daughter. Finally, they arrived in American-controlled Germany after a dangerous journey through Eastern Europe. Yaffa contracted the mumps and was very sick. She was sent in an ambulance to the hospital, but ended up in a convent. No one came to visit her because my great-uncle Sholem did not know where she was. In the convent, Yaffa heard the sisters planning to baptize her, since she was an unclaimed, abandoned Jewish child. One nun, whom my mother called her guardian angel, Schwester Henrietta, Sister Henrietta, felt that baptizing Yaffa was unjust and unchristian. She inquired after Yaffa's family and found her uncle and aunt and reunited her with them. During that time, Aunt Merala gave birth to a baby, Bilinka, and they were coming closer to port to sail to Egypt. In March 1946, Uncle Sholem finally received the permit to enter Palestine via Egypt. The British were in control of Palestine at that time and were letting very few Jews in. But Dod Sholem had a British passport because he made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael many years previously and lived there for a few years. He returned to the shtetl because his parents worried about his physical and religious safety and demanded his return home. Never in their worst nightmares could they have envisioned the horrible destruction that ensued, decimating their entire extended family in shtetl. Uncle Sholem's first wife and 2 daughters died in the Shoah, but his papers included a wife and 2 daughters. As a result, Sholem was able to procure a permit to enter British Mandate Palestine with a wife and 2 children, one of them being my mother. They boarded a rickety ship and in very cramped and unsanitary conditions sailed to Egypt. In Egypt, they traveled by train to Israel. You can't travel that route today. On the train, 10 days before Pesach, traveling from Egypt to Israel, they shared the train car with livestock and other refugees. The women sitting next to Yaffa asked her her name and where she came from. My mother told us. I told her that my father is Moshe and my mother is Tzipora, which is true. And I am coming out of the slavery of Egypt and the land of the pharaohs to the freedom of Eretz Yisrael. My mother always had a flair for the dramatic. The lady thought that I was lying and said, "What chutzpah, such a little girl and already a liar." Dod Sholem told her Yaffa was telling the truth, but she looked unconvinced. There's another version of this story in my family, that Yaffa told this Exodus scenario to the border patrol, and he slapped her across the face and he said, "Chutzpanit." That was her welcome to Israel. On April 5th, 1946, they arrived in British Mandate Palestine and lived in an apartment in Yerushalayim. Soon after they settled in Yerushalayim, there was a funeral, and the coffin was followed through the streets by a long line of mourners. Yaffa asked how many people were murdered, what massacre took place, and they said 1 person died. So Yaffa said, "Wow, that's wonderful. Only 1 Jew died, was escorted by so many people who were living?" No one appreciated her attitude or her frame of reference. Yaffa thought, my mother, that once they settled in Yerushalayim, her life would return to normal, Ira Kodesh, but new difficulties arose at every moment and every turn. She was alone, without her parents, and it was challenging to adjust to different attitudes, and that other Jews in Israel had towards refugees in the Holocaust. Some were not welcoming, and those who were often believed that the Holocaust only happened because the Jews in Europe acted out of weakness and didn't fight back, that they went like sheep to the slaughter. She also saw that the people in Israel were not interested in hearing about the terrors of the Holocaust and her history in Lithuania. They were building a new young land. Yaffa decided to become a Sabra on the outside and become indistinguishable from the native Israeli. Language was surprisingly not a barrier. This was due to her mother, who spoke to her Ivrit at home. Even in hiding, she taught my mother to write the alphabet on the mud walls while hiding in the pigsties, and taught her Hebrew reading, Hebrew language, Hebrew speaking, and especially Hebrew songs. Her uncle changed his last name from Sonenzon to Ben Shemesh. So Yaffa Ben Shemesh, Sabra extraordinaire, was born. Uncle Sholem, now having done his part in bringing Yaffa safely to Israel, wanted to move on with his life and family, and looked into sending Yaffa to a youth aliyah children's village or kibbutz. She was to be interviewed by youth aliyah to determine the school. This is how my mother always relayed the story. She was brought to Dr. Hans Beit, the head of youth aliyah, a severe and self-important man. He sternly stated, answer only yes or no to the following questions. In the past 2 years, did your father go to Beit Knesset? I answered no, honestly. In the past 2 years, did your Ima light Neirot Shabbat? I answered again, truthfully, no. Did you eat only kasher for the past 2 years? No, I replied again. He wrote on the form, lo datit, not religious, and enrolled her in a school for gifted children on a secular kibbutz of the Shomer Tza'ir. Just before leaving Yerushalayim, my mother went to say goodbye to the Nazir, Rav David Cohen, who was born near Vilna and learned in the yeshiva in Radin with the Chofetz Chaim when he was younger. He knew my mother's family very well, especially her maternal grandfather. Later in Switzerland, right, after he was a young man, he met Rav Kook and was very inspired by him. Before making Aliyah, he took on many practices of Nizirut, and that's why he was always called the Nazir. In Israel, he became a Talmid Muvhak of Rav Kook. So he asked my mother, why are you leaving Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh? And she told him that they assigned her to a secular school on a Shomer HaTza'ir kibbutz. He was shocked. The granddaughter of Yitzchak Uri Cohen Tzedek, a friend of his, will not go to a secular school, he determined, and he arranged for another interview with Youth Aliyah. He brought her back to the Youth Aliyah office and asked that they interview her again, and phrased the questions differently. And this is the new interview. Before the war, did your father go to Beit HaKnesset? Of course. Before the war, did your mother light Neirot Shabbat? Every week. Before the war, did you eat kasher? All the time. Subsequently, she attended a religious boarding elementary school in Tel Aviv called Tel Ra'anan. After Tel Ra'anan, they wanted to send her to a trade agricultural school because she was a refugee and an orphan. But she was determined to pursue a religious academic high school education. They told her that children without parents, and especially refugees, can't be picky. But she sought out Betsy Gotzfeld, the head of Mizrahi women in Tel Aviv, who made arrangements that Yaffa could attend Kfar Batya, a new school run by Rabbi David Elliach, a new innovative principal. There, Rabbi Elliach created an honors high school within Kfar Batya for the serious students. The star student was Yaffa. But the student-teacher relationship was stormy at first. Rav David Elliach taught them Hebrew literature and began the first class contrasting the imagery of the Galut Jew, the benighted shtetl, versus the Sabra, the new enlightened Jew in Israel. My mother stood up and argued with him and asked him where was most of Jewish literature written over the last 3,000 years? And what did he know about the shtetl or Jewish European culture and the Shoah? Yaffa wanted to study Talmud and to take the Bagrut exam. My father asked Rav Unterman, the chief rabbi, if she could. When he was told yes, she was the first girl in Israel to take the Bagrut in Talmud, and my father was her teacher. She wrote poetry and won honors in history. She was a voracious reader. She participated in national running competitions. She was often chosen to be the school representative. She wanted to excel in everything. Once an American government representative came to see Kfar Batya and asked why such beautiful grounds were being used for a school of refugees and orphans. Why only 4 people slept in a room rather than 20 like in the American orphanage. Additionally, he questioned why the school bothered to provide an academic education rather than just teaching skills and trade. The principal, Rabbi David Elliach, asked him if he would send his children to such a school. He He responded, no, of course, my children have parents and privilege. These students are moneyless orphans. It's not worth the effort. My father, Rabbi Elliach, responded, these are our children. Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. All Jews are responsible and are guarantors for the other Jews. They are our family. And the conversation was over. Yaffa Sonnensohn, Yaffa Ben Shemesh, continued learning and loving Judaism. She married Rabbi David Elliach in Yerushalayim after she graduated high school, and they moved to America for a shlichut of 2 years. This marks the 64th year of their 2-year shlichut. So for my mother, 2 pivotal events took place in Yerushalayim. The intervention by the Nazir Rav David Cohen, who made sure that she should receive a religious education, and my mother's marriage to my father. And in an indirect way, Rav Kook had a hand in their future lives by being a big influence in my father's life, and through the Nazir Rav David Cohen, who steered my mother to a religious elementary school. The idea that 2 divergent lives could be shaped by Yerushalayim and then go on to impact the Jewish world at large is an important component of Yerushalayim. It's an ir shechubra la yachdav. It is the city that connects all the Jewish people together. As Rav Smadar Rosensweig says, Yerushalayim is the national, corporate, and spiritual center of the Jewish people. Yerushalayim represents the identity of the Jews as a communal unit. Even though we are spread all over the globe, Kahal shebe'eretz Yisrael ikri kahal. The community in Israel is the official definition, halachically, of what a collective, communal entity is. All our tefillot are focused on the Kedusha and Shekhinah returning to Tzion and Yerushalayim to reestablish that identity. וירושלים עירך ברחמים תשוב, ותשכון בתוכה כאשר דיברת, ובנה אותה בקרוב בימינו בניין עולם, וכיסא דוד מהרה לתוכה תכין, בונה ירושלים. ותחזנה עינינו בשובך לציון, ברחמים, and המחזיר שכינתו לציון, and שיבנה בית המקדש במהרה בימינו. What we all really want is the building of Yerushalayim, and the fact that it will be reestablished as Makom HaShekhinah, as Makom HaMikdash, and as the central point of Am Yisrael. So what is it about Yerushalayim that is so special? Because we really have an interesting relationship with Yerushalayim. So I'm just going to go to a shiur for a minute. 10 minutes, really. And that's the sheet that you all have. Really, in the Torah, we don't have Yerushalayim, right? We don't have the word Yerushalayim in the Torah. We have, as we see, look in at number 1, in Bereshit Perek Yudalit, when we talk about Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem, when Abraham, right, is after the war, the 4 and 5 kings, he comes to Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem, and he brings out bread and wine because he's the Kohen Le'el Elyon. So the first time we find the mention of Yerushalayim, it's called Shalem, right? It is called a city of peace, a city of completeness. When Abraham is told, right, to do the Akedah, we find in Bereshit Perek Kafbet, "Vayom akachna et bincha et yechidcha asher ahasta et Yitzchak, v'lech lecha al Eretz HaMoriah." There, we have the place mentioned as Eretz HaMoriah. "V'ha'aleu sham la'olah al achad ha'arim asher omar elecha." So Eretz HaMoriah, the land of Moriah, and there's one mountain where the Akedah took place. What does Rashi explain, Eretz HaMoriah? So Rashi explains that Eretz HaMoriah means Yerushalayim. And how does Rashi prove this? He says, V'chen b'divrei hayamim. In divrei hayamim, when it wants to describe Shlomo's building of the Bet HaMikdash, it says, in divrei hayamim bet, right, Perek Gimel Pasuk Aleph, Livnot et Beit Hashem b'Yerushalayim b'Har HaMoriah. So Rashi first is bringing up Pshat. It's clear that Har HaMoriah is Yerushalayim, and that's how we know its identity. And that is where Shlomo built the Bet HaMikdash. And Har HaMoriah, Goren Aravna HaYebusi, that's where David brought his korban to stop the Magifa. The Rabotenu Pirshu, so the Pshat is it says Har HaMoriah in Yerushalayim. So that's Rashi's first salvo, it's a Pshat. But Rabotenu Pirshu, Rashi's also bringing a Midrash. Al Shem Shemisham Hora'ah Yotza Yisrael. Rashi also wants us to understand the view of the Midrash. That's the place where Hora'ah comes to Yisrael. Moriah means to teach. That's where we have the Sanhedrin. Kimitzion Tetzei Torah Udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. So not only is the significance, right, of Har HaMoriah, that's the place where later on we had the Bet HaMikdash, right, that's also the place where Hora'ah, for teaching, and Onkelos Tirgimo Al Shem Avodat HaKtoret, Sheyesh Bo Mor. Moriah, Mor. Mur. That's one of the Samamanim that we have in the Ktoret. So what's interesting here is that Rashi is bringing all these different ideas. On the one hand, we have the Pshat, and on the other hand, because in the future there'll be Hora al Yisrael, and in the future, right, there'll be Toret, and in the future, that's where we're going to build the Beit HaMikdash. And this really defines for us, right, the interesting tension that we have when we want to define the Kedusha of Yerushalayim. On the one hand, we have many midrashim that the whole world was created from Even HaShtiyah, from the foundation stone. Right, that is the stone that is under the dome of the rock. That's where the Akedah took place, and that is really the center of the world, almost like the belly button of the world, and from there the whole world was created. So Yerushalayim always had a Kedusha. But on the other hand, the question is, this Kedusha also had to be kind of set up, and it had to be activated. And the question is, when was this activated? And if it's activated by different acts, is it retroactive? That the Kedusha goes all the way back, or there's almost like a buildup of this Kedusha in Yerushalayim. And that is really the big question that we have. Did Hashem pick Har HaMoriah because it's a special place, or is it a special place because it was picked as the Makom HaAkedah? Let's look at Pasuk Yudalet. Vayikra Avram, so Avraham calls this place Hashem Yireh, Asher Yamer Hayom B'Har Hashem Yireh, which means Avram calls this place Hashem will see. Again, when we always talk about Yerushalayim, we always talk about it in the future. It's going to be the place in the future where Hashem will see. But, so what about now? What about when the Akedah took place? What kind of Kedusha, right, does it have? So we have this interesting relationship. On the one hand, it's going to be the place that's going to be tremendous Kedusha in the future, but because it has already so much potential Kedusha already starting out. Look at number 5. What does Rashi say? Hashem Yireh, Pshuto K'targumo. Right? Hashem yivchar v'yir'elo et hamakom hazeh lahashrot bo shchinato lakriv kan korbanot. Hashem's going to pick this place to put his Shechina and to bring korbanot there. So again, our question is, was the Shechina there always, and that's where we picked it? Or once we picked the Beit HaMikdash, that's where the Shechina is? So we really have kind of an interdependent relationship here, because on the one hand, Yerushalayim always had a Kedusha. That's the idea of Even HaShtiyah, and from creation it was always unique. And 9 Kabim Shel Yofi came to Yerushalayim. But on the other hand, we also have this idea that it only really reached its full potential Kedusha when Abraham had the Akedah there, when we built the Beit HaMikdash there, right? When we also saw it as a makom of Kedusha, and we focused our tefillot there. So even though it always had an intrinsic Kedusha, it also is kind of intensified by our relationship with it. So where do we have any mention of Yerushalayim? In Chumash, in Tanakh, we have tons. But in Chumash, look in Dvarim. We never have the name Yerushalayim mentioned in Chumash. In Tanakh, we have many. Look in Sefer Dvarim, Perek Yudalet. V'achalta lifnei Hashem Elokecha b'makom asher yivchar l'shaken shmo sham. Meaning again, when we eat the kodshim and we eat other issues, other foods that really can only be eaten in Yerushalayim, it's called Lifnei Hashem, which means Yerushalayim is a place that is Lifnei Hashem, but it's B'makom Asher Yivchar. Just like we have with Avraham, it says B'Har Hashem Yira'eh. And look at the language in Dvarim Perek Tetzayin. Again, B'makom Asher Yivchar Hashem l'shaken shmo sham, and Pasuk Tetzayin, Shalosh Pamim B'Shana Yira'eh Kol Zchorcha Pnei Hashem B'makom Asher Yivchar. Which means this is the place that Hashem sees. And even though Hashem's going to choose it in the future, He's choosing this special place in the future because it already has intrinsic Kedusha, right? Initially from creation and from all the events that happened since. So that's why Yerushalayim for us is really a very special relationship. On the one hand, it has intrinsic Kedusha. On the other hand, our right relationship with it and our building special places and the Beit HaMikdash and our view of it, right, also intensifies its Kedusha. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. And I would just want to end with the Rambam for the Shi'ur part. In the Rambam, Hilchot Beit HaBchira, right, Perek Vav, Halachat Tetzayin, right, the question is of the Kedusha for Maaser, Truma, and Shemitah. ולמה אני אומר, במקדש בירושלים, קדושה ראשונה קידשה לעתיד לבוא, ובקדושת שאר ארץ ישראל לעניין שביעית ומעשרות כיוצא בהן, לא קידשה לעתיד לבוא. לפי שקדושת המקדש בירושלים מפני השכינה, ושכינה אינה בטלה. The Rambam explains that when you talk about Truma and Meiser, right, once Eretz Israel was captured by Yoshua, we start that Kedusha. Once we had the years of Galut, that Kedusha fell away, and we reinstituted it when we had Ezra and Nehemiah coming. And that Kedusha is forever. But our other question is, what about the Kedusha of Trumot and Masrot, and what about Yerushalayim? So the Rambam explains that once Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash and really gave Kedusha, even though again it always has Kedusha, but intensified that Kedusha for this specific halachic classification, so Yerushalayim never loses its Kedusha. It is always Chayav B'Trumot and Masrot. Why? Because Kedusha Rishona Kidsha Latid Lavo. Even that Kedusha stays forever. And why? Because it is Mipnei HaShechina. So again, it's interesting. Shlomo had to build the Beit HaMikdash to start this process of halachic Kedusha for Trumot and Masrot and Shvi'it. On the other hand, what do we see? We see that once it was established, it has a Kedusha forever. So our relationship with Yerushalayim really has a big impact, right, on its Kedusha, and our relationship does have some impact, and we should always think about it when we talk about and think about Yerushalayim, that it really is intrinsic, it has Kedusha, but if we don't keep it, if we don't really value it, and we don't see it as a Makom Kadosh, right, then even though it doesn't lose its intrinsic Kedusha, right, the overall idea of its Kedusha is diminished somewhat. I want to go back now, after we took our little sheer break. So what was my mother's life after marrying Yerushalmi in Yerushalayim? My parents took this idea of Yerushalayim as a national headquarters and were a kind of Israeli Yerushalmi religious, educational, cultural embassy in the Galut. If anyone knew my parents, they were very Israeli, very Yerushalmi, very much, transplants here in this country. They were very driven to have impact on the world and Jewish community, to bring a taste of Yerushalayim and Israel wherever they went. My mother, Yaffa Elliach Alea Shalom, historian, author, scholar, poet, playwright, teacher, professor, lecturer, wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. In one word, she was a superwoman. During her active years, she was a larger-than-life personality, a unique Eshet Chayil, a devoted mother who sewed and embroidered beautiful clothes for her children, cooked, baked, attended plays. She always set a festive table with pizzazz and had flowers and lit candles as a centerpiece. She was glamorous and down-to-earth at the same time, a mix of Israel and continent. All my friends adored her. She just had it. Her enthusiasm and dynamism and idealism were infectious. She loved people. She wanted to help them, to be a part of their life. She never wanted people to feel abandoned like she was. And she was especially motherly and helpful to her students. She wanted to give back to the system that aided her. She was a mother who wove elaborate bedtime stories about her shtetl and Eishishok in Israel. She was like life itself, a force of nature. At times, it seemed as if she had boundless energy. She loved her grandchildren and would shower them with gifts and hugs and her favorite Safta cookies. My mother loved throwing parties and celebrating happy occasions. She commissioned a stunning embroidered chuppah for the marriage of her grandchildren. She made them personalized gifts and cards for their birthdays and graduations. My mother was a very devoted wife. My father and mother were a team, a formidable team. Powerhouses in their respective fields, very independent, yet also a strong unit. They built a wonderful family together and contributed to the Jewish community together. My mother was a woman of substance who spent her life in the service to the university and Jewish community. She was a world-class scholar who played a leadership and pioneering role in most areas where she ventured. She was an inspirational master teacher, scholar, speaker, and writer. She was unusual because she was a religious Orthodox woman who was celebrated in all parts of the Jewish world community. She had major obituaries and featured articles in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Tablet, Jewish Week, Jewish Press, Ami, Mishpacha, Hamodia, among scores of others. Very few people can span that. Especially, we were captivated by her students and major world Jewish leaders' moving testimonials in person and via email. My mother initiated and established the groundbreaking oral history project of interviewing Holocaust survivors. One of her most famous books is Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust, which relates the spiritual heroism of Jews during the Shoah. She was the first to accentuate the experience of the religious community and to emphasize and highlight the importance of spiritual resistance, as well as the central role women played before and during this catastrophic time period. She gave the survivors and those who perished eternal life through perpetuating their stories. Her genius was to recreate their life for us, their heroism, and their unique inner world. My mother's gift to the world was that every Jew is a hero in his or her own way, and that everybody's story is important. My mother went to night school at Brooklyn College. It took her 6 years to graduate. She was originally an expert in Russian intellectual history. She wrote her dissertation on the Baal Shem Tov and possible contemporary sectarian influences on him. She wrote for Dr. Salo Baron, the premier Jewish historian of that era. He saw it as a strong argument against Gershom Sholom's view of Chassidut, so it was a little bit of a personal thing there. She was also a Woodrow Wilson scholar in Princeton. The more she delved into Chassidut and Eastern European history, the more I think her Mitnagid Lithuanian roots were calling out to her to perpetuate their legacy. So she left her studies of Chassidut and went more into the Holocaust. That's why her first book was like Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. It was like a great integration of the two. In the early 70s, early on in her tenure as professor at Brooklyn College, she decided to craft a course exclusively on the Holocaust. No one had taught the Holocaust as a college course before. She struggled to find appropriate primary and secondary historical sources. There were very few sources authored by Jews. There was the powerful diary of Anne Frank, but not so much else. Soon after, she opened the Center for Holocaust Studies in Brooklyn. I have a poster here that I put with some important pictures. I have her with President Ford, I have her with President Carter, I have her with Elie Wiesel, I have her with Tip O'Neill, and a whole bunch of others, and my father, of course. We have their wedding picture, so if anyone's interested, some pictures from the shtetl later, you can come up and look at it. But it was the presidential election. Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter were running for president. To show his support to the Jews and his sensitivity to the large community of Holocaust survivors, President Ford visited my mother's fledgling Holocaust Center in Brooklyn. Gerald Ford lost, and Jimmy Carter won, but President Carter was inspired by his opponent's interest in the Holocaust, and Elie Wiesel and my mother established President Carter's Holocaust Commission, which founded and built the United States Holocaust Museum in the Smithsonian Institutions on the National Mall. My mother published scholarly articles and lectured on the topic of Jewish spiritual heroism. She championed the greatness of the human spirit that was revealed in every individual who did not emotionally, morally, or spiritually succumb to depravity. My mother initiated the idea of interviewing survivors of concentration camps, ghettos, work camps, hidden Jews, partisans, righteous Gentiles, liberators, and others. It was not mainstream in the historical community to respect oral history. She was swimming against the tide. That didn't deter my mother. She realized that she must press forward and interview as many survivors as she can. She originally recruited her Brooklyn College students. Anyone here were from her Brooklyn College students that did those interviews? To interview the survivors. It was a joke. Wherever we used to go, my mother said, "Oh, she was a student of mine at Brooklyn College. She was a student of mine in Brooklyn College." So even whenever I said it, I hear it in her voice. To interview survivors. Now, it is the main mode of Holocaust commemoration, but she was the pioneer. She was the one who inspired the Steven Spielberg Oral History Project and the Names Not Numbers projects and countless other. She was also the one who publicized the actions of Pope John Paul II. When he was a local priest, he did not baptize hidden children during the Holocaust and after. And it's so interesting that I see so many of the things that my mother was interested in really touched upon personal things in her life, and that later on she really wanted to make sure that those values really continued. And I think that the story of the Pope reminded her of the story of her and Schwester Henrietta. Starting with a handful of family photos, I have some on here, my mother spent 15 years traveling all over the U.S. searching for photographs and diaries. My mother ultimately collected 6,000 photographs of the townspeople of Eshisho. This is aside from all the other communities and other people that she really collected their pictures, accounting for 92% of the shtetl's slaughtered Jews. Most of these were photographs taken by my maternal great-grandmother, Alte Katz, who was the shtetl photographer. When my maternal great-grandfather, Yitzchak Uri Katz, the friend of the Nazir, voyaged to the United States to receive a pharmacy degree at NYU, he returned with a camera as well. My mother selected 1,500 of these pictures into the Holocaust Museum's Tower of Faces, that my mother always liked to call Tower of Life. The faces portray the lives of so many ordinary Jews, intimate and vibrant. By 2016, 40 million people had visited the museum since its opening in 1993, and most choose my mother's exhibit as the most impactful. My mother assembled hundreds of photographs and oral histories into an 818-page book, There Once Was a World, a 900-year chronicle of the shtetl of Eshisho. It was a nonfiction finalist for the National Book Award. The title originated with my grandfather, Moshe Sonnenson, who got out of the Gulag, came to Israel, and lived in a little moshav. My mother and her brother worked to get him out. He would always sigh and introduce his stories about the shtetl with Amol is gewen a Welt. Once there was a world. At my wedding, right before he passed away at our Friday night Sheva Brachot, he declared that he was pleased with my mother's ambitions for the shtetl. At least the people, and perhaps even God, will remember that there once was a world filled with faith, Judaism, and humanity. Emunah, Yiddishkeit, and Menschlichkeit. A few years ago, our family donated this vast archive to Yad Vashem. This past February 20th, Kaf Dalet Shvat, was the official ceremonial opening of this archival collection. Cataloging and digitizing has begun in earnest, and scholars and laymen are encouraged to research this vast and unique archive. Please, when you go to Yad Vashem, ask to see the Yaffa Elliach Shtetl collection. It's in the archive, but everyone is supposed to have access. And if you don't, call me. Now, the diverse parts of her seminal archival legacy are represented in the three major Holocaust museums: the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, the Jewish Heritage Museum here in New York in Battery Park, a lot of my mother's Yaffa Elliach Shtetl collection, and what was once the Center for Holocaust Studies, right, in Brooklyn is there, and now in Yad Vashem in Yerushalayim. Now her Israel Yerushalayim phase has come full circle. Her final resting place is in Israel, in Beit Shemesh, in Eretz HaChaim, between Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv, and Ranana, the places that influenced her most in Israel. Her most important personal archive of the pictures, interviews, diaries, video footage of the Yaffa Elliach Eishishot Shtetl collection is now in Yad Vashem in Israel, in Yerushalayim. My youngest daughter, Elisheva, wrote of my mother, "I am truly impressed and inspired by my grandmother's utter perseverance and ambition to live a life of hope and meaning despite the traumatic challenges she faced throughout her life. She truly rebuilt her life despite all the odds, not by forgetting the past, but by grasping at every strand of hope and light that presented itself and using that to motivate her and push her forward to achieve greatness, to impact others. She never thought of her story as a burden, rather as a lesson, a commemoration that should be shared with the world and impact those who are willing to listen." End quote. Her gift to us, her family, her students, and the world at large was her ability to capture the spark of what was destroyed. She signed and dedicated every book with the phrase, Me'at or doche harbe choshech. A glimmer of light chases away all the darkness. She personally emulated the concept of Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, seeing Yerushalayim, Jewish history, personal challenge, as a glimmer and a flaming beacon of hope. Everything really is dependent on attitude. For her, attitude was king. No challenge was too great for her. She inspired us to always see the golden light. It is our duty to pass her flaming torch from one generation to the next. May her legacy shine forever.
The Tefillah L'Shlom HaMedina and the Mishaberach for the soldiers of Tzahal. Avinu Shebashamayim Tzur Yisrael V'Goalo V'Reiches Medinas Yisrael Reishis Tzmichas Ge'ulaseinu Ogein Oleha B'Yavras Chasdecho V'Peros Aleha Sukas Shlomecha Ushalach Oracha V'Amitcha L'Rosheha Sareha V'Yawatzeha V'Sakneim Be'etzato V'Milfanecha Chazek Es Yidei Megine Eretz Kodshenu V'Anchilei Meloheinu Yeshua V'Ateres Nitzachon Te'atereim V'Nos Ato Shalom Ba'aretz V'Simchas Olam L'Yosheveha V'Yes Kol Acheinu Kol Beis Yisrael V'Kodna B'Chol Artzos Pizureihem V'Solechem Mehira Kama Miyus L'Tzion Yirecha V'Lirushalayim Mishkan Shemecha Kakosuf B'Soras Moshe Avdecha Im Yihiyeni Dachacha B'Kitzei HaShamoyim Misham Yikabetcha Adonai Elohecha Misham Yikachecha Ve'aviacha Adonai Elohecha El Ha'aretz Asher Yoreshu Avosecha V'Rishcha Ve'Hitivecha V'Hirbecha Me'avosecha ויחד לבבינו ליהבו ליראה שמך ולשמור את כל דברי שרעך ושלח לנו מהרה בן דוד משיח צדקך לפדוס מחכה קץ ישועתך והופע בהדר גאונו זכר על כל יושבי סבל ארצך ויאמר כל אשר נשמה ויפול אדוני אלוהי ישראל מלך ומלכוסו בכל משלו אמן סלה. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל העומדים על משמר ארצנו וירא אלוהינו מגבול הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים ומן היום הגדול עד לבוא הערבה ביבשה באוויר ובים ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשי ידיהם. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם ויעטרם בחסר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון. יקוים בהם הכתוב כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיע אתכם ונאמר אמן. Going to sing Hatikva now, then those who will stay for Mariv will then separate in order to be able to daven Mariv. Those who want to go downstairs will be invited to do so, and those who would like to stay for a festive Mariv are also invited to do so. Professor Rosensweig for her inspirational words and for sharing with us something which is both personal and also history. History that now we feel more of a part of. We're going to daven now, and then we're going to